Court for the Eastern District of New York, Judge Dina Coggins, U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of California, Eric Schulte, to the U.S. District Court for the District of South Dakota, Judge Camilla Theeler, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the District of South Dakota. Congratulations to all the nominees and their families. Welcome to the committee. We have 3 colleagues who will be here in due course to make introductions, and I will recognize Senator Graham when he arrives. And we'll start, let's see who might be the first one. Senator Butler, awarded for her promptness. You are here to introduce Judge Coggins.
Thank you, Chair Durbin. I am pleased and proud as a Californian and excited to introduce Judge Coggins to the committee. She's being nominated to serve on the Eastern District of California. I know my senior colleague, Senator Padilla, is going to offer some comments when he arrives, but I will try to do justice to the incredible contributions that Judge Coggins brings and experience that she brings to her nomination. I also want to recognize her mom, Ms. Cynthia Ambrose, her son Elias, and her daughter Alea, who are accompanying her today. We all know, Chair Durbin, that none of our nominees are here on their own, that it takes the entire support of their families, and I'm grateful to welcome the Coggins family to the committee. Judge Coggins has spent nearly all her life in the Eastern District. She was born and raised in Sacramento and has spent most of her legal career serving in the very community in which she was raised. The respect that she's gained in her community is evidenced by the support we've seen for her nomination, including a letter that several of her colleagues on the state bench wrote to this committee in support of her nomination. They highlighted her tremendous work ethic, her great integrity and character, as well as her unflagging commitment to the rule of law and equal justice that she's shown during her time on the bench. These colleagues said of her service as the presiding judge for the Juvenile Court that she's a humble and quiet leader, not seeking the spotlight or fanfare, simply working day in and day out to improve the court. We know when she speaks, they say, she has put considerable thought into her words and that her reasoning and her judgment are sound. They go on to comment that in the courtroom, she also demonstrates her steady and fair temperament. She's thorough and diligent. Judge Coggins is efficient with her time on the bench and has handled substantial caseloads. She analyzes issues in a careful and balanced manner and provides thoughtful, well-reasoned, and common-sense decisions. She's compassionate to all who appear before her and takes the time to understand the impact each decision will have on them. If she is confirmed, Judge Coggins will be joining one of the busiest courts in the country. The Eastern District of California is currently seeing, on average, 803 filings for each judgeship on the court, according to the most recent statistics. That caseload level is the 6th highest of any federal district court in the country. It's vitally important that we confirm Judge Coggins quickly to ensure that the Eastern District is able to continue its work of ensuring the people of California have full and timely access to our justice system. And I'll note before I end that if Judge Coggins is confirmed, she will be filling the seat currently held by Chief Judge Kimberly Mueller, who was the first woman to ever serve on the Eastern District of California and for whom Judge Coggins served as an extern early in her legal career. I believe Judge Coggins will be an asset on the bench of the Eastern District of California. I thank the chair for holding this hearing and would urge my colleagues to join me in supporting the nomination of Judge Coggins to the federal bench.
Thank you, Senator Butler. Next, we'll recognize Senator Thune, who is here to introduce Mr. Schulte and Judge Theeler. Welcome.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to introduce two outstanding South Dakotans to the committee today. Eric Schulte and Judge Kamala Theeler have been nominated to fill vacancies in the U.S. District Court for the District of South Dakota. I'm very pleased to see their families here as well to mark this occasion. I'm told that Eric's mother is watching from the Dow Rummel Nursing Home in Sioux Falls with her many friends, and I'm sure she must be very proud today. I'm also told that Judge Theeler's daughter, Maya, is missing her AP history test to be here today. So I'm hoping she will learn a lot more at the Senate committee hearing than she will on that test. But nevertheless, a lifetime resident of Sioux Falls, Eric Schulte has a distinguished record as a longtime lawyer in South Dakota. He attended the University of South Dakota, where he received his BA in 1994. He received his JD from the University of South Dakota School of Law in 1999. From 1999 to 2000, he served as a law clerk to the South Dakota 2nd Judicial Circuit in Sioux Falls. Eric's been a partner at the Davenport, Evans, Hurwitz, and Smith law firm since 2005. He was president of the State Bar of South Dakota from 2015 to 2016. Of note, Eric is also a member of the Academy of American Poets and a frequent contributor to Past Petals, the South Dakota State Poetry Society magazine. Judge Theeler also has an impressive background. Originally from Pierre, South Dakota, she's been a judge for the South Dakota 2nd Judicial Circuit since 2018. She has presided over 57 trials that have gone to verdict or judgment. Prior to her current role, she served as an assistant U.S. attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of South Dakota from 2012 to 2018. Her legal experience includes being a partner at Lynn, Jackson, Schultz, and LeBrun law firm and working at the Morgan Theeler law firm. She received her JD from the University of South Dakota School of Law in 2000 and her BA from the University of South Dakota in 1998. Throughout her career, she has participated in volunteer programs focused on youth and students. She's presented for years to high school seniors about their legal responsibilities as adults. She often welcomes students to visit the courthouse and give tours and conduct mock trials to help educate them about our legal system. I believe both of these nominees have the character and impartiality to serve lifetime appointments on the federal bench. I strongly support the nominations of Judge Theeler and Mr. Schulte, and I urge the committee to support their nominations as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. I know your schedule is busy, so if you have to leave, we understand. Senator Graham has arrived, and I'll give him a chance to say a word or two before we start as Senator Schumer comes to the witness table. Want to say anything? Senator Schumer, I know you're very busy, and you want to make sure your mic's turned on. And you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you, Ranking Member Graham, my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee. As you know, I enjoyed serving my time on the committee, both for 16 years in the House and 16 years in the Senate on the Judiciary Committee. So I'm honored to come before the committee today to introduce a truly remarkable nominee, Sanket Balsara, who I was proud to recommend to President Biden to serve as a district judge for the Eastern District of New York, which includes Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island. About 7 million people in that one district. Judge Balsara made history in 2017 as the first South Asian American judge to serve in any court within the Second Circuit when he was appointed the magistrate judge for the Eastern District. New York's South Asian population is one of the fastest growing in New York and in America. I think we're very proud to have more South Asians in the New York metropolitan area than anywhere else. And they're great, hardworking, family-oriented, law-abiding, great people. And we love them. And I try to make the bench look more like New York and more like America, and this is one example of that. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to recognize Judge Balsara's wife, Chrissy DiLorenzo, a professor at one of the great medical schools in New York, Stony Brook. Congratulations. And She's with us this morning, as you can see. Judge Balsara is, I'll forgive him, a Bronx boy. But Chrissy is from Brooklyn, so he likes to say he married into Brooklyn. I also understand that Judge Balsara's parents, Jay and Aruna, are watching the hearing live from Los Angeles. Hi, folks. And what a special moment for them. And Judge Balsara's in-laws, Tom and Loretta, are also watching live from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I'm sure they're proud too. What parish? In Brooklyn, we don't say what neighborhood are you from. We say what parish. You know? No. Okay. Well, they're from a parish in Brooklyn, I'm sure. Judge Balsara is the epitome of the American dream, a proud son of hard-working immigrant parents from India and Kenya, who taught him the value of public service as an early age. His father was an engineer for the city of New York for 33 years, who not only raised his son to be, sorry Dick, a good Yankees fan, but even worked on the renovations of the original Yankee Stadium in 1974. Before the renovations, I often got the cheap seats where you sat behind a pole, but they didn't have that in the new stadium. His mother went to community college at night to become a nurse, working with patients in low-income communities. So Judge Balsara is dedicated to parents who dedicated their lives to public service. I know he's proud to be following in their footsteps. These are the great American dream stories. We hear them every day in New York and around the country, and it makes us so proud and so optimistic about the future of our country, which I am. Judge Balsara has all the qualities of a first-rate jurist. His colleagues and peers have praised his, quote, excellent judgment, and is being described by those who know him well as brilliant, ethical, even-keeled, energetic, hardworking. Those are some of the words my judicial panel used when they met him. His credentials are undeniable. He's a graduate of Harvard and Harvard Law. He clerked for Judge John Codal of the Southern District of New York. After years in private practice, he worked to protect investors in our community's financial markets and the SEC, where he was acting general counsel in 2017. Judge Balsara also has a broad range of pro bono work and has been recognized for his outstanding representation of victims of domestic violence. He's also worked hard to defend the rights of the incarcerated individuals on death row. And again, he made history as the first South Asian American federal judge on any court in the Second Circuit when he was appointed the magistrate judge in the Eastern District, where he served honorably since. I've appointed great people to that bench. In short, Mr. Chairman, our courts need more people like Sanket Balsara. The Democratic majority has been very proud of confirming scores of highly qualified, diverse judges, 180, nearly 180 in fact, and thank you, Chairman Durbin and Ranking Member Graham and everyone else who's cooperated to help us reach that number. These judges are reshaping the judiciary for the better, not only by making our courts look more like America, but by restoring balance and trust on the bench through their broad range of experience. I'm confident that Judge Balsara will serve with distinction. That's why I'm proud to support his nomination. I want to thank the judge. And his wife for being here. I want to thank the members of the committee once again and my colleagues for the opportunity to be here today. And I look forward to working with you to confirm more judges in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Schumer. We know you and Senator Thune have a busy schedule, so we're glad you could join us here this morning. Senator Rounds, recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Graham. I'm pleased to join Senator Thune today in introducing the two nominees for the U.S. District of South Dakota, Eric Schulte and Cammie Theeler. Both of these individuals were born, raised, and educated in our great state and made the smart decision to stay there. Mr. Schulte and Ms. Theeler are both well-qualified attorneys and highly respected within the South Dakota Bar Association and in their communities. I believe they will both exercise judicial restraint and apply the law as written. Ms. Theeler is a native of my home community of Pierce, South Dakota, and has an impressive list of career experiences spanning from the U.S. Attorney's Office to teaching at Dakota Wesleyan University to her work now as a state circuit court judge. It is because of her commitment to upholding the law, along with her commitment to public service, that she received the South Dakota Young Lawyer of the Year Award in 2009. In addition to her career accolades, Ms. Theeler has also been heavily involved in the South Dakota legal community through her service on several committees of the South Dakota Bar Association. I believe in her ability to be effective as she would offer to serve in the U.S. District of South Dakota. Mr. Schulte is also South Dakota through and through. He has had a long and loyal career with the law firm of Davenport Evans. Throughout his career, Mr. Schulte has maintained a commitment to his community by serving on the board of the Banquet, which is a food pantry in Sioux Falls, as well as the board of East River Legal Services. Mr. Schulte also serves on the board of the Promising Futures Fund, a nonprofit that helps 14 schools in the Sioux Falls School District with the highest rates of poverty. It is because of his commitment to both the law and community, alongside his moral and ethical conduct, that Mr. Schulte was selected as the Lawyer of the Year for the Second Circuit Bar Association in 2017. Overall, I am proud to support both of these nominees. I believe they are undoubtedly qualified for a position on the federal bench. As such, I urge the committee to support the nominations of Judge Theeler and Mr. Schulte for the U.S. District of South Dakota. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rounds, and let me thank both Senator Thune and Senator Rounds for working closely on a bipartisan basis with the White House. We look forward to hearing these nominees and appreciate you submitting them for our consideration. Thank you. Senator Padilla?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member Graham, as well. It's my privilege to introduce Judge Dina Coggins, who my colleague Senator Butler has spoken about earlier in the hearing. She's President Biden's nominee to serve on the United States District Court for the Eastern District of California. Judge Coggins is joined today by her mother and her children. As you'll hear today, she not only has deep, extensive experience required to do the job effectively, but a deep understanding of and empathy for the communities of the Eastern District. And I'm confident that if confirmed, she'll do an outstanding job as a federal judge, just as she's done an outstanding job as a Superior Court judge for Sacramento. Now, Judge Coggins earned her undergraduate degree from the California State University, Sacramento, and her law degree from the University of the Pacific, McGeorge School of Law. And as Senator Butler referenced earlier, while in law school, she served as an extern for then magistrate judge on the Eastern District Court and now Chief Judge Kimberly Mueller, whose vacancy Judge Coggins is nominated to fill. And I know that when I say these are big shoes to fill, it's not just my opinion, but a sentiment shared by the entire legal community in the Eastern District. Now, after school, Judge Coggins worked in the private sector for over half a decade as an associate at Morrison & Foerster and later Downey Brand. But after spending those years gaining extensive litigation experience, both in state and federal court, she found herself back in public service as Deputy Legal Affairs Secretary for then Governor Jerry Brown. Her first experience on a California state bench came as an administrative law judge with the State of California's Office of Administrative Hearings. She also spent time working for the State of California's Victim Compensation Board as both a supervising attorney and hearing officer. In 2021, Governor Newsom appointed Judge Coggins to serve on the Sacramento Superior Court, where she serves today as presiding judge of the Juvenile Court. Throughout her time on the bench, she has been driven by a compassion for people and the district that she serves, and she's constantly demonstrated a deep understanding of the impact that the judicial process can have on the litigants before her. That same understanding and care for the community has guided her at every step of the career, whether representing individuals in immigration and family law proceedings. She has served as a fair and thoughtful Superior Court judge, or even volunteering in her free time to mentor elementary and high school students to help educate them about the legal system. Her roots in the Eastern District, along with her diverse wealth of legal experience in both public and private sectors, make her an exceptional candidate to serve the Eastern District, and I urge my colleagues to advance her nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you, Senator Padilla. We are now going to take a minute or two to transition the nomination table and ask the nominees in just a minute to come forward. Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was on the phone to our friends in Israel. Sorry I was late. I appreciate all the work our red state colleagues are doing with administration to try to get qualified nominees to come forward. I thought we saw that in South Dakota. Our staffs are working on a problem about background checks. We won't go into it, but we're missing a lot, and our friends at DOJ and the White House need to up their game, and I'll talk to you privately about that, but we got a problem we need to solve here. So with that, I'll let the hearing go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Graham. If the nominees would please step forward and remain standing for a moment. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that all nominees answered in the affirmative. I don't know what would happen if they didn't.
There you go.
We don't have that problem today. We're going to start with Judge Balsara. And am I going to pronounce your name correctly? Balsara?
Balsara is great.
Balsara, please proceed.
Thank you so much. Chair Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, good morning. I want to thank President Biden for his trust and the honor of this nomination. I also extend my abiding thanks to Senator Schumer for his exceptionally kind introduction and recommendation, and for his tireless support of the federal judiciary in New York. In this regard, I'm also grateful to Senator Gillibrand. My journey was only possible because of the people who joined me today. Watching online are my parents, Jay and Aruna, my in-laws, Tom and Loretta, and my extended family of cousins, aunts, and uncles from New York, North Carolina, Colorado, Hawaii, and the United Kingdom. Friends are a life's blessing, and I've been gifted with so many who are here in person and online. My judicial colleagues from the Eastern District of New York, my mentors, partners, and associates from WilmerHale, my former supervisors and coworkers from the SEC, my friends from college and law school who have been with me for decades through thick and thin, and my high school and college debate coaches who saw a shy, terrified, and unconfident 13-year-old, believed in him, and changed his life. I also owe so much to Judge John Codal, whom I had the honor of clerking for, and who showed me what it means to be a great judge, including by impressing upon me that every case is important. My judicial family, including my courtroom deputy, Eddie, and my army of law clerks, current and former, are watching. I could not have survived as a magistrate judge without you, and I'm so proud of each of you for the people you are and the lawyers and professionals you have become. Of course, I have no greater champion than my wife, Chrissy, who is here in person. We met back in high school at a debate tournament. She then ignored me for 13 years, found me again, and the rest is history. Every day I'm reminded by her how to be kind and generous. She is the love of my life, and I owe her everything. My grandparents on both sides of my family shined and mended shoes for a living. They grew up in Kenya and India in circumstances that can only be described as modest. They had no formal education, but they imbued in their children the importance of faith, hard work, family, and care for one's neighbors. Armed with that foundation, my parents, left their homes and families and came to the United States on one-way tickets with no job, no money, and knowing almost no one else. A journey that required an unfathomable amount of courage. None of them, nor I, ever imagined that a day like today was possible. I am so honored for the chance to serve the country that has given me and my family so much. Thank you to all the senators, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Coggins.
Thank you, Chair Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, and the other members of the committee for the privilege to appear before you. I am grateful to President Biden for the tremendous honor of his nomination, and I am humbled by the faith he has placed in me. I would like to thank my home senators, Butler and Padilla, for your recommendation. Thank you for your warm introduction and kind words. I would like to take a moment to introduce three very important people in my life who are here with me today. My mother, Cynthia Ambrose, who was my biggest support. She was a single parent and worked tirelessly to provide for me and my brother. It is through her that I have learned strength and determination. I would also like to introduce my 13-year-old son and my daughter who just turned 12 yesterday. My son is the most thoughtful and kindest person I know. My daughter, I'm so proud of her independence and confidence. They both motivate me to be the best version of myself. I would like to acknowledge my close family members who have recently passed, who I know would be so proud to see me here today. My grandfather, Joseph Ambrose Jr., a veteran of the United States Air Force who served for 24 years. He met my grandmother, Yoshiko Nishi Ambrose, when he was stationed in Japan in the 1950s. They returned to New Orleans, Louisiana, and raised their children. My grandmother, she didn't speak the language, but she courageously learned the language, and at times she was alone while my grandfather was deployed overseas. They instilled in me love, honor, integrity, a strong work ethic, and a commitment to public service. My grandmother passed a few months ago at age 93, my grandfather a few years before her. My father, Michael Coggins, also served in the United States Air Force and served in the federal government. He recently passed during the pandemic. I learned through him to treat people fairly and with dignity, no matter their background and struggles. I also want to acknowledge my stepfather, Eugene Freeman, who served in the United States Marines and had recently passed as well. I know they are all here in spirit today. I want to acknowledge those watching remotely in California, my brother, Michael Coggins, his wife and children, my uncles and aunts. Also, I want to acknowledge and thank my wonderful state court colleagues and court staff at the Sacramento Superior Court and all of my former colleagues and friends for their mentorship, support, and kindness. I want to thank the legal giants who gave me my start and trained me very early on. I would like to thank Chief Judge Kimberly Mueller for allowing me to be her judicial extern so many years ago and her mentorship throughout my legal career. And lastly, I would like to thank Judge Patricia Escrow, who inspired me to go to law school. Thank you, Senators, for your opportunity, for this opportunity and your consideration of my nomination.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Schulte, before you have an opportunity to say a word, I'd like to say that I've been on this committee a number of years and had hundreds of nominees presented. You're the first who has cited an interest in poetry. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, and the entire committee for considering my nomination. I am honored and humbled to be here today before this committee. I want to thank President Biden for nominating me. Mr. President, it is the honor of a lifetime, and I am so grateful for your nomination. I want to thank Senators Thune and Rounds for the kind introduction and supporting me in this nomination. I hold Senators Thune and Rounds in the highest regard. I want to take a few moments to recognize my family that have traveled a great distance to be here today. I'm honored to have my partner, Lori, with me. Lori, you are my rock and inspiration every single day. Thank you for supporting me during this process. My nephews, Josh and Zach, are also here today, along with my Uncle Don, Aunt Judy, and their entire family, Rebecca, Kara, Chris, Brendan, and Avery. Thank you all for coming this long distance to be here. I love all of you very much. Watching back home are my mother and the other ladies from the nursing home online right now, along with my brother and my sister who were unable to be here today. I love all of you too, and thank you for everything. My father was a farmer from Hanson County, South Dakota. He was drafted and served in the Army during the Korean War. We lost him in 2015. Not a day goes by that I do not think of him, and I know he is looking down. I'm fortunate to come from a large extended family in South Dakota, a place my family has been proud to call home since the late 19th century when we arrived. For all the extended family watching, thank you very much. I would not be here today if it were not for my parents and the values they instilled in me. My parents did not go to college, but encouraged me to do so and supported me financially with their life savings so I could attend the University of South Dakota. Thank you, Mom and Dad. I will never forget the sacrifices you made for me. Finally, the State Bar of South Dakota is something I am very honored to be a small part of. I want to thank the members of the class of '99 at the University of South Dakota's Knudsen School of Law, and to acknowledge the judges I had the privilege of clerking for, my law partners at Davenport Evans, the many other lawyers I have practiced with and against over the years, the many mentors I have had along the way, the amazing support staff that have helped me, and the wonderful court reporters and court personnel I have worked with that are essential to the practice of law. It is without a doubt the honor of a lifetime to be nominated for this important position. I look forward to answering any questions the committee may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Schulte. Judge Theeler?
Good morning. It's nice to be with you. Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee for the honor of appearing before you here today. I would like to start by thanking my home state senators, Senator Mike Rounds and Senator John Thune, for their service to the great state of South Dakota, for their support of me throughout this process, and for the kind introduction this morning. I'd also like to thank President Biden for his nomination. I'm so honored to be considered for this important position. My family's here with me today. My husband, Ty, and I met during my first semester of law school. He offered to give me his notes, and from that day forward has been my biggest supporter. Ty, you're the best wingman that a girl could ask for, and I'm grateful to share this life with you. Our pride and joy, our daughter Maya is here today as well. She's an incredible young lady, and we're so grateful to be her parents. Maya, thank you for your love and support and for being the best kiddo in the world. I'm also joined by my mother, Pat Clark, and my little brother, Zach Clark. Zach and I were incredibly fortunate to grow up in a family full of love and support. We had the best role models in the world in our parents, and they taught us to do our best, always, and to care for others. Thank you both for your love and support and for being here today. I'm also joined by my extended Theeler family, my in-laws, Jack and Nancy Theeler, and my brother and sister-in-law, Colonel Brett and Stephanie Theeler, and their kids, Braden and Allison. They are the family that I chose through marriage, and I couldn't love them more. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the family and friends I have up above, watching from the premium seats. While I miss them dearly, the life lessons that I learned from them will never be forgotten. I'm also fortunate to have additional support from my family and friends at home. Thank you to each of you for your love, support, kind words, prayers, and positive vibes. It means more than you know. I've been fortunate to have many branches in my law family, including the judges that I clerked for, my friends and colleagues at Morgan Theeler, Lynn Jackson, Schultz, and LeBrun, and the United States Attorney's Office. For the last 6 years, I've been honored to work on the bench with my colleagues and friends in the Second Judicial Circuit. For all of my friends in the legal community, thank you for your commitment to do justice and for using your skills and talents to help those in need. When I started my journey in the legal profession, I never imagined that I would end up where I am today. I hope to work hard, do well, and be of service to others, but the profession has given me so much more. To reference my friend and favorite professor, Dr. Mike Roach, I've been able to move around the lantern and see situations from a different perspective. I've learned from and worked with incredible attorneys, judges, clients, and people that have appeared before me. It has been an honor and a privilege to develop these relationships and provide service to others. With that, I thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Judge. I might note for the record that all 4 of the nominees have been found well qualified by the American Bar Association. Judge Coggins, in your opening statement, we each now have 5 minutes to ask questions. In your opening statement, you did something that is fairly unique in this committee. You gave special recognition to your children and very kind words to your 13-year-old son in particular. It is interesting to note in your background and in your resume the work that you've done with juveniles in the legal system. Can you make any general observations or help us to understand the challenges these young people are facing and how we should respond?
Absolutely. What I can say in California, and I think this is consistent across the country, is a recognition of a priority of public safety, but for juveniles also a priority for rehabilitation. And what I see in Sacramento County specifically and in California and across the country is collaboration and working on prevention, intervention, and treatment for juveniles. As you know, fentanyl is of concern in all communities for juveniles that come before the juvenile court. And I have been proud to work with state leaders and community partners in addressing the concerns around fentanyl, but also all of the prevention and treatment services for at-risk youth.
So many people trace the origins of difficulties faced by children to trauma that they have lived through or experienced, adverse childhood experiences. Have you seen that?
Yes, I currently preside over the Juvenile Trauma Response Court, and that's for juveniles who have had significant trauma. And we often see in juvenile dependency those youth who have been traumatized, abused, or neglected also crossing over to the juvenile delinquency cases. And the Trauma Response Court really is looking at addressing the needs of those youths and treatment for the youth in order to avoid recidivism and to allow them to be rehabilitated and treated so that they can be upstanding members of society.
When you consider the experiences many of these young people have lived through in their early lives, and you thank God that you escaped that personally or your children escaped it, I guess the real question is there a chance for rehabilitation? Can their lives be set back on a good track and good things result? You've had plenty of these type of cases before you. What's your thoughts?
Well, I will say in California and in the code section, juvenile court judges are considered to have a unique role as judges. We are to be leaders in the community. We are to investigate and also collaborate with community partners in assessing the needs of the youth. And that is what the juvenile court judges do in California. And I am so thankful for that and having the opportunity to do that. I do see rehabilitation on a regular basis in my courtrooms, which overall brings safety to our community, which is most important for all of us.
Thank you. Senator Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you and your families. Just building on the theme of children and protecting people, this committee has been working in a bipartisan fashion to try to do something about the social media platforms that exist today. They're unregulated, they're unaccountable, you can't sue them because of Section 230. There's no agency looking over their shoulder, and there's really no laws on the book protecting the consumer. I'd like to ask each of you, starting with you, Mr. Balsara, how you say it?
Balsara.
Balsara. What's your view of the social media situation in America? Is it a problem?
Well, I can't speak to it on a general basis. I can only talk about what's happened in my courtroom and what I've seen in the 7 years as a magistrate judge. I've had the opportunity to preside over many cases at pleas where it involves child pornography offenses that involve activities that took place over social media. So we have seen it in our court as a way of there are criminal activities that take place, but as to the policy issues, I defer to you and the other members of Congress.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I have seen in the juvenile court concerns about criminal activity occurring and posted on social media, and the attempts to address that issue. I leave the work to the policymakers as to that, but I do recognize that it is of concern for our juveniles especially.
Thank you, Senator. I would concur in that I do believe it is something of concern for juveniles. I can say with respect to my experience, 24 years largely as a civil litigator, it's changed the practice of law with respect to discovery. Certainly things are more public than I think I could ever have imagined when I started practicing law 24 years ago. With respect to policy decisions, I would of course defer to this committee.
Thank you for that question. Early in my career, I did employment law work, and some of that work was it was early in social media's birth, too, and some of that was trying to promote having appropriate policies and thinking about how social media would be used. And certainly, it has evolved well beyond where it was at when I was making those speeches 15 years ago. I certainly recognize the issue, and I'd agree with my fellow nominees that it is an important policy issue, and I'm glad that Congress is looking at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My mistake. Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations again to all of the nominees. Thank you to Ranking Member Graham. Just a couple of questions. Ms. Coggins, as you noted in your opening remarks, you mentioned a judge who inspired you to actually go to law school, Judge Patricia Escrow. Can you share with us how you came to know Judge Escrow and the story of what led you to pursue a career in law?
Absolutely. I was in my first year of college and was put on a jury. I didn't have a family of lawyers. I had not been exposed to the judicial system. And after sitting on that jury, I was interested in watching. I was mesmerized by the court process. And they told me that I could go up to the master calendar and get a spreadsheet of cases that would be heard on a particular day. And so any day that I was away from school and school was not in session, I would go and watch in the back of the courtroom cases. Each day I'd watch closing arguments, I'd watch jury selection. And one day, Judge Patricia Escrow asked me to come back into her chambers and wondered why I was there all the time. And I told her I just was fascinated by the judicial process. And she asked me if I ever thought about going to law school. That was the first time I had ever thought about law school. And she was the one who encouraged me to do that. She does not know that I became a lawyer or a judge. And I hope that one day she'll find out.
Thank you so much for that, knowing that it is the pursuit of justice that actually inspired you, witnessing it firsthand. In my opening comments, I talked about the caseload of the Eastern District and the importance of making sure that we have the adequate number of judges in that district court to ensure swift justice for those in that district. I want to ask a little bit about your experiences that make you confident that you'll be able to both quickly and effectively make a transition to the federal bench given the pace and caseload that exists in the district.
Thank you, Senator. I transitioned to the bench as an administrative law judge almost 10 years ago. And during that time, I presided over cases that involved applying federal law, and those cases could be, and at least one was appealed to the district court. Those cases came from 1,500 different state and local agencies implying laws, different laws, varying laws from those cases. I learned to write comprehensive, well-reasoned, and understandable decisions during that period of time, and I also learned to preside over numerous court proceedings. From there, after being there for a significant period of time, I transitioned to the state court, and in that time, I have continued to become very familiar with different areas of law. I was assigned to the juvenile court, presiding over juvenile dependency and juvenile delinquency cases. I never practiced in that area of law and was appointed as presiding judge of the juvenile court, supervising judges in an area of law that was very new to me. And so in those experiences, I have learned to get up to speed very quickly, to become familiar in varying areas of law, and to feel that I could efficiently preside over any sort of court proceeding that came before me.
Thank you, Ms. Coggins. Mr. Balsara, I understand that while you were in private practice, you served on the pro bono committee of your law firm and dedicated more than 2,000 hours to pro bono legal work. Can you share with us some types of pro bono work that you were involved in and what led to your deep commitment to pro bono legal services?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator. I think the firm I worked at had a long tradition of doing pro bono service. It was a part of what all lawyers were expected to do and did do. The cases that were not only the most challenging, but the most rewarding legally and personally and professionally, were on behalf of victims of domestic violence who were fleeing their abusers. In one case, I represented a young woman and her autistic child who had fled from Italy to come to the United States to get treatment, and when they came to the United States, her partner abused her and then abused the child, and then sued to have the children taken back to Italy. And the firm let me represent them at trial in the Southern District of New York and on appeal in the Court of Appeals, and we were able to make sure that the child was able to get his autism treatment and remain in the United States with his mother and not be forced to return back to Italy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Butler. Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Coggins, you used to work for Governor Jerry Brown,
That is correct, Senator.
and I believe you advised him on issues regarding parole.
As the governor under the California Constitution, when the parole board recommends that a inmate be paroled, that matter then comes before the governor to determine whether he's going to reverse that recommendation.
Did you advise him on parole?
I was not advising him. What I provided was a background, all background information. So the nature and circumstances of the particular case that was before us. I was looking at the correctional file. In addition, I was reviewing.
Do you remember a parolee named James Schoenfeld?
I don't, Senator.
Okay. You talked a lot about, as did you all appropriately, about juveniles in your testimony. Governor Brown in 2015 paroled Mr. James Schoenfeld. He was convicted of kidnapping 26 kids, juveniles, and burying them alive. Were you with Governor Brown then? Judge?
I left in 2015, so I'm unsure of the time period in which that occurred.
This happened in 2015.
That name is not familiar to me. What I can say is those decisions
Do you
are.
remember the case?
I do not.
Okay. When it happened, it got a lot of publicity in California. Did you call Judge Brown or Governor Brown and say, Governor, I love you, but what planet did you just parachute in from? Why have you done this?
I did not.
Do you agree with this decision?
I would need to look at the file. I don't know the context. I don't know the background, the insight. And the decision that Governor Brown would make is whether the parolee poses an unreasonable risk to the safety of the community. And
Do you think kidnapping 26 juveniles and burying them alive presents a risk to the community?
I certainly believe that if that individual is convicted of those crimes, which it sounds like he would be a risk to the community.
But you don't have an opinion about whether Governor Brown did the right thing?
Again, Senator, I would have to be able to look at the complete file and all of the considerations required of the governor, who ultimately makes the decision.
So he might have done the right thing, in your opinion?
I would want to look at the complete file in order to make an assessment.
All right, Judge Balsara. Do you remember a case called J&J Sports Products v. If I mispronounced it, sir, please correct me. Ferraris?
I do recall that case, Senator, yes.
Okay, it was pretty recent, 2020. You're a magistrate judge, right?
I am.
And your decisions have to be reviewed by a federal district court judge?
That's correct.
Okay. You made a ruling in that case, and the district court reversed you.
In part, yes.
And the district court said, quote, these are the judge's words, not mine, that you ignored, quote, a large collection of cases in this district holding that essentially identical allegations are sufficient to state a claim. So your boss said you just ignored a whole line of cases. What's going on here?
Well, Senator Kennedy, the way I recall that case was there's a split in authority about claims that can be brought under the Copyright Act. And there were, in addition to the cases that the district judge cited, there was a whole bevy of other cases going in the other direction. And the Court of Appeals had not ruled on it.
Yeah.
And
But the judge didn't say you looked at both line of cases and decided one was more accurate than the other. He said you totally ignored a line of cases. Did you just disagree with those line of cases?
Senator, I would never ignore a whole line of cases, and I know that was a very lengthy opinion that I issued, and it's my practice in the 1,000 opinions.
Well, I'm going to run out of time. I'm sorry to cut you off, Judge. I don't mean any disrespect. The district court judge says you ignored those cases.
I would respectfully say, as I don't...
Was he wrong?
I'm not going to call a colleague wrong, but I can say that in every case where I write a lengthy opinion, I read all of the applicable authorities. And I know in that particular situation, there's a line of other cases that I have read, and I did so in all of my decisions, and I can expect that I did so in that one as well.
But why did you ignore the line of cases is my point. I can understand you saying, well, there are two line of cases and they conflict, and I find the reasoning more persuasive in this line. The district judge reversed you, said you just totally ignored them. That worries me.
He reversed me only in part, Senator, and in those line of cases, I think there's a split of authority at the district court level. There's no governing Court of Appeals decision or a U.S. Supreme Court decision, which my oath requires me to follow.
Okay. Thank you, folks.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of you and your friends and families. Congratulations on your nominations. In addressing the fitness to serve of nominees who come before any of the 5 committees on which I sit, I ask the following 2 initial questions, and we'll just go right down the line with Judge Balsara. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Judge Balsara, I think it's very important for our judiciary to reflect the diversity of the people who live in our country. And would you agree with that, that it is important that our judiciary reflect the kind of diversity of the people in our country and why?
I think a diverse judiciary, diverse judicial staff helps instill confidence in the people who come before the court that the process is fair and equal and open to everyone.
And at the same time, I would think for all of you that it is very important that our judges approach each case with an idea of being fair and objective and applying the applicable precedent. Do you agree that that is what we would want our judges to do?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
I was very taken with the fact, Mr. Schulte, that you are a poet. And I have some of your poems, in fact, that my staff gave to me. And I consider poetry to be a creative endeavor. In fact, I think for all of us, I continuously encourage my staff, and it applies to myself, to be creative and to go to refer to the arts as a way to maintain a certain equilibrium. Is that what poetry does for you? I mean, in fact, what does poetry do for you?
It does, Senator. That's what poetry does for me. I was taken with poetry at a very young age and recently had some published for the first time in my life. But I take great interest in poetry. It relaxes me. I believe it stimulates my mind. I'm an amateur poet, to be crystal clear. I'm an amateur poet, but I'm a big fan of the great American poets, Mary Oliver, Ted Kooser, former poet laureate of the United States, and Jim Harrison.
Do you have a favorite poet?
It would probably be Mary Oliver, Senator. She would be my favorite poet.
I came across her kind of recently. So, okay, let me keep up that work. In fact, at a time when we are facing so many challenges, I believe that really paying attention to the right brain creative aspects of our beings, which we all have, I think that really helps us to deal with the fast-changing world. Judge Coggins, thank you for talking about some of the juvenile cases that you have confronted. And I think that you referred to your court as a juvenile, I'm sorry, what was it? Is that a special kind of court that you sit on?
That is correct.
Trauma response court. I had never heard of a court like that. And so you get all of the trauma cases that involve juveniles?
That's correct. And so I sit over the Juvenile Trauma Response Court, which is juveniles who have had significant trauma. They are often in both courts, the delinquency court and the dependency court, and there is a robust treatment team for those juveniles, as well as the juveniles that appear in my commercially sexually exploited children calendar as well, in the juvenile delinquency calendar.
So you deal with some of the most challenging, emotionally charged cases.
I believe that's true for all of the juvenile court judges, but my docket is specialized in significant trauma.
So do you think that other states should have, I had not heard of a trauma court, do you think other states should have this kind of specialized court?
Other states do have the specialized courts. They're considered as collaborative courts. Other states also have mental health courts for juveniles, as well as substance use treatment courts for juveniles. All are very important because these juveniles are at risk, and we want to ensure that they receive the appropriate treatment and rehabilitation so they can be upstanding citizens and ensure the safety of our community.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rono. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of you for being here and for your willingness to serve. Judge Balsara, I'd like to start with you. There's an organization that you belong to called the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association. You've been a member of it for the last 7 years. It's abbreviated sometimes as NAPABA. NAPABA has made a number of comments over the years, and I understand that someone can belong to an organization without necessarily embracing every statement that that organization makes. Nonetheless, there are some of these statements that I'd like to know, I think others on the committee would like to know, whether you agree with them. Among other things, NAPABA has publicly taken the position, quite aggressively, that no sanctuary jurisdiction, that is a city, municipality, or local unit of government, may be denied federal funds or may have any federal funds withheld on the basis of that entity refusing, declining to cooperate with federal immigration law enforcement authorities. So they take this opposition to any legislation that would withhold any federal funds to sanctuary cities. Even worse than that, NAPABA goes a second step and states that it believes that states and localities that decide to be sanctuary jurisdictions, that is, that don't honor ICE detainer requests, deserve, in fact, to be rewarded with additional financial support. Now, do you share this view, that sanctuary cities ought to be rewarded and never have federal funds withheld for refusing to cooperate with federal law enforcement?
Thank you, Senator. I think, as you may appreciate, NAPABA has several 100,000 members.
Sure.
I'm only one of those members. I'm not an officer director. I'm certainly not familiar with the class of statements that you're addressing or any press releases to that effect, and I've never read any NAPABA statement on these particular items that you've identified, so I can't.
So you were not aware they had taken this position?
I was not, Senator.
Do you agree with that position that they've taken?
Senator, I can't agree or disagree with the position because the issues you've identified, not only do they come up in our courts, they're likely to come up in my court.
Actually, I'd push back on that. This is a legislative determination. This is almost impossible that it could come up in your court. And keep in mind, this is a core function of the federal government. It is only the federal government, under Article 1, Section 8, that has the authority over our immigration laws and consequently over the enforcement of those laws. This is the prerogative of the federal government, and yet you're saying that a local jurisdiction that refuses to cooperate with that should not have federal funds withheld, or the entity is saying that rather. Now, a legislative determination, again, I don't think this is something that could or would come up. But let's move on. NAPABA has also opposed legislation, H.R. 734, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2023. Do you believe that males should compete against females in sports?
Again, Senator Lee, I can't comment one way or another about that topic, in part because in Long Island, just as an example, there are states and there are local and county legislation that's been passed in the recent weeks. Those laws are under challenge. Those cases are being brought in the Eastern District of New York. I simply cannot comment about issues that bear on litigation that are before me.
I understand that you're declining to answer. Keep in mind, you are a member of an entity that has made those statements. And if you can't comment on those statements, then perhaps, as a judge and as someone sitting for a nomination to be a lifetime appointed federal judge, then perhaps the answer should be that you shouldn't be a member of the organization. But it does raise an inference as to whether you do agree with them, and I note for the record that you're declining to do that. Now, NAPABA filed an amicus brief in a case called Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard. I'm sure you're familiar with that case. It went before the Supreme Court and was decided about a year ago. And in that brief, it called for, quote, consideration of race as a factor in college admissions. Do you believe that some students should either lose or have lower access to educational opportunities in higher education based on their race?
Well, I think, Senator, the Supreme Court has clearly said no. And it's my current oath, and if I'm...
You'll stick with that.
And I...
Now, NAPABA also called the Supreme Court's ruling in another case, 303 Creative versus Elenis. It called it misguided. Do you also believe that that decision was misguided? Do you share this view? And how should the case have been decided if it, in fact, were misguided?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that statement, but I never refer to Supreme Court decisions in that way because of my oath to follow them, and it would be inappropriate for me to disparage decisions and then uphold my oath to follow them.
Okay. My time's expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do note here, look, if you're going to belong to an organization that engages in advocacy, you can't have it both ways. You can't at once say, I know nothing about that, and then decline to say anything about it and belong to that organization. I think you ought to have to answer the question. Thank you.
Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to the nominees. Congratulations to your families for this honor as well. I'd like to begin with an initial question, just like a yes or no answer, moving left to right on the dais. Will you pledge to faithfully apply the law without bias and without regard for your personal policy or political preferences?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Now, in reverse order, please, I'd like you to characterize your approach to First Amendment cases.
I think in my 17 years of legal practice and my 6 years on the bench, I have not had direct First Amendment cases that I've dealt with. If I were to be so honored to receive this position, I would consider each case that came before me, the facts of that case, apply applicable law and binding precedent.
Thank you, Senator. In my 24 years practicing law, I don't believe I've had a First Amendment case, but if I would be honored enough to fill the role of United States District Court judge, the First Amendment is the cornerstone, I believe, of our democracy. I would faithfully apply precedent handed down by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals that would be applicable to me or the United States Supreme Court in applying those important freedoms.
Senator, in my 10 years as a judicial officer, I have applied federal law to cases before me. That law has not been the First Amendment, but I would be consistent as I applied those laws in those cases in applying the binding precedent to the record that was before me.
Senator, I've had several First Amendment cases. My approach has been the same one that my colleagues here have indicated they would follow, or the one that I follow. I'd only add that it's my regular practice to keep up with regularly issued opinions by the Second Circuit and Supreme Court. It's an ever-evolving, complicated area of the law, and it's important to stay current.
Let's talk for a moment about the right to counsel as established by the Sixth Amendment and in the Gideon v. Wainwright case. Based upon your experience, why is it essential that all defendants have representation, particularly indigent defendants, and how will you apply those principles in your courtroom?
Senator, I think it's a cornerstone right. If we're going to deprive someone of their liberty, they should have not only just adequate representation, but the best representation that's possible. And in that regard, what I try and do in my court is I serve on our Criminal Justice Act Committee, which regularly reviews those lawyers who are appointed by the court to represent indigent defendants to make sure that they are of the highest caliber. And I think that's the non-case work that's important to making sure that right is held up in the form it needs to be.
I would uphold that right and do so in the cases that are before me. Currently in the juvenile court, both juvenile delinquency and juvenile dependency cases, those minors are entitled to counsel as well. The cases are very complex, not just in the realm of juvenile court, but in all of the courts. And it's important that parties have an opportunity to be represented and advised as they're going through the court process to ensure that their rights are respected and they have had an opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Senator. I've been court-appointed counsel on occasion during my 24-year career, and the philosophy I would take on the bench is that it's essential for justice. It's essential to even the playing field. Our system is designed for zealous advocacy on both sides in criminal cases, including difficult cases, and it would be something that I would hold dear and make a priority.
Thank you, Senator. In my last 6 years on the bench, I regularly have appointed counsel to represent defendants. I think it is a cornerstone of our system, and it's vitally important to help defendants navigate through a very difficult process. And there were often times where I may have had defendants who indicated they wanted to represent themselves, and I always canvass them thoroughly to make sure they understand the benefit that they could receive from having counsel represent them, and I would continue to encourage that, as I believe it's a bedrock of our system.
Thank you. Final question is about language access. You may have already encountered in your careers, you may encounter, should you be confirmed, cases where parties to civil or criminal proceedings, English is not their first language. What do you see as the role of language access in the courts, and will you, in proper consultation and compliance with various regulations and with the Judicial Conference, make it a priority to ensure that parties in court are able to engage fully should English not be their first language?
I think it's vitally important. In our circuit right now, I think we have over 40 different languages. We regularly have interpreters brought in for every kind of hearing, both in criminal and in civil proceedings. And if we're unable to find an interpreter, we use Language Line and have other resources as well. And I think the system is not always easy for folks to navigate under the best of circumstances, and it would certainly be more difficult if English was your second language. So I would be committed to making sure that everyone had access to interpreters throughout our proceedings.
Thank you, Ms. Schulte.
Thank you, Senator. My answer mirrors Judge Theeler's answer. Practicing in the same circuit where she's on the bench now, there are multiple languages. It's something that I think is important and necessary, and I would consult with my colleagues if confirmed in the applicable rules, but I think it's very important.
Judge Coggins?
I agree with the responses, and I will just note it's critical for access to justice to know what is happening in the courtroom. It's complex in a language that you know, and if you don't understand, we ensure, at least in the Sacramento Superior Court, in the California courts, that you do have access to an interpreter, not just as a party, but also in juvenile cases for parents, so they understand what's happening in the cases concerning their children.
Senator, New York City is the language capital of the world, and I agree with my colleagues. I would simply add, it's a real need on the civil side where we often lack interpreters or the funds to appoint interpreters, and just like we need lawyers to represent individuals pro bono on the civil side, that's where the greatest need is, in my view.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations again to all the nominees before us. I raise a question every time during these hearings that is important to me, and I think it's important for the federal judiciary. One of the things that I know the chair is proud of, the committee as a whole is proud of, is working with President Biden to nominate and confirm the most diverse group of judges to the federal bench over the last few years. Not just diverse in terms of gender or ethnic racial background, but in terms of life experience and legal experience. I think it makes for a healthier, stronger judiciary when there is that greater pool of ideas and thoughts and perspectives. And I also think there's the added benefit of strengthening public confidence in the judiciary when the judiciary reflects the diverse country that it serves. So that being said, I want to ask each of you if you agree that type of diversity is a value added, and not just on the bench, by the way. I want to ask specifically your thoughts on ensuring diversity amongst law clerks, because we know how critical that law clerk experience can be for a young attorney, whether they pursue public service for the rest of their career, whether they practice law in the private sector for the rest of their career, or their aim to serve on the bench themselves one day. Do you agree diversity is a value added? If not, why not? If you agree, then what thoughts you, if you're fortunate enough to be confirmed, what you would do to enhance additional diversity in your courtrooms? And we'll start with Judge Balsara.
Thank you, Senator. The answer to the first question is yes. And on the second question, what I try and do as a magistrate judge, and what I would do if I'm so lucky enough to be confirmed, is I try and recruit at a broad scope of law schools and not keep a limited list of law schools. But I also want to be transparent in my hiring, which is to put positions publicly so that anyone can apply who's a law graduate and not limited to sort of informal conversations or connections that people may have.
I agree with your value statement. I think diversity is an absolute strength of our country. And when our judicial system mirrors the public in which we serve, it does enhance the judicial confidence and confidence in our system. As a practicing attorney and then on the bench, it has been important for me as someone who came from a background of not having attorneys in my family or knowing of an attorney to expose young people, both in elementary school. I would bring in elementary students to watch cases, not in the juvenile court, but in other areas, to have the exposure to someone that maybe comes from a similar background or has similar life experiences. For me, that was vital in recognizing that if I saw someone doing it, maybe I could aspire to do it. And I would continue with that commitment. And not just, I think law clerks, it's absolutely important to come from a diverse background, but also to ensure that our youth have exposure to judges and legal professionals that they can see and aspire to be.
Thank you, Senator. I would agree with the value statements articulated in your question. I believe it's important for the profession of practicing law as well as for the bench, and would continue to support that if I would have the honor of the nomination of United States District Court Judge. I played a role in our state bar in South Dakota, has taken tours since my term as president of the state bar to Indian country. South Dakota is 9% to 10% Native American, and our state bar as a value has determined it's important to have outreach to grade schools, high schools, middle schools in Indian country to encourage potentially careers in the practice of law. So it's something that I believe is important. I would agree with Judge Coggins, not only for clerk hiring to look at all aspects of candidates, to look at all kinds of diversity in candidates, but also just straight up mentoring of young lawyers and being involved in your community.
Thank you. I would agree with the value statement as well. I guess what I would say with regard to hiring law clerks is I think it's important to hire folks that have a diverse background for their benefit personally, but also for the benefit of the court. I think that exchange of ideas, I also think we serve diverse communities, and so it does help the trust in our system and build integrity in our system when people come into court and they see a diverse group of people in the courtroom as well. The best part about focusing and I guess caring about diversity when you're hiring law students or hiring law clerks is that those are the folks that go on to become leaders in our community, leaders in our profession. And so by promoting diversity at that level, I think you really promote it throughout the profession, and it's certainly very important.
So thank you all very much. Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask one follow-up question of Judge Coggins. I understand earlier in the hearing she received a question from Senator Kennedy about her role in advising Governor Brown on parole decisions. I want to make sure she had an opportunity to finish her response and clarify what her role was and what her role was not.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. My role in working for the Brown administration was to review all of the facts relating to an inmate who had received a recommendation from the parole board to be paroled. And the governor then was under the California Constitution, had the right to either affirm or reverse that recommendation. And my role was to know the case file very well for questions that were posed by my client, Governor Brown. I did not make recommendations. He made the ultimate decision on those cases, which I shared with Senator Kennedy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Kennedy.
we have a lot of time left.
Well,
Do
Senator,
we have a second round?
no. I mean, we would announce in advance if we were doing a second round, and I didn't do that. We haven't, historically, we don't do second rounds on nominees.
Okay, thank you.
I want to thank the nominees, their family, and friends for being here today. And I would tell you there may be some questions for the record that will be sent your way. I invite members who have additional questions to do just that. With that, this meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.